Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Rosh Hashanah. We are up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Bet. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Leavdi ben Chaim Nachaim, the Refuah Shenemav, Bacha bat Esther, and Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betor Shai Chulei Israel. This Mishnah begins discussing the mitzvah of blowing a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Now the commentaries explain that the obligation is to hear the shofar being blown, as is evident from the blessing for this mitzvah, which concludes lishmoa kol shofar, to hear the sound of the shofar. Now it discusses which types of horns can be used for this purpose. Now the source for this mitzvah is Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 29, pasuk 1, and in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, a day of blowing it shall be for you. Although this verse does not specify which type of instrument should be blown, the Gemara on page 34 in Masechet Rosh Hashanah derives from a verse in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 25, pasuk 9, which mentions shofar in a different context, that a shofar is required. The Mishnah begins, Kol ha-shofarot ksherin chutz mishal para. All horns are valid to be used on Rosh Hashanah except those of a cow or an ox, which the commentaries add. Because a cow's horn is called a keren in the Torah. The pasuk says in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 33, pasuk 17, Bechor shoro hadar lo v'karnei re'em karnav. His firstborn ox, majesty is his, and his horns are the horns of the wild ox. The Torah uses the term keren for the horns of cattle, ox and cow. Since it is not called a shofar, it cannot be used for the mitzvah blowing a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Now the next Tana disagrees. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, V'alo kol ha-shofarot nikru keren, but are not all horns called keren? Shneimar bimshoch bekeren hayovel, as it is stated, when they draw out the blast of the ram's horn, it calls it keren. In Sefer Yoshua, chapter 6, pasuk 5, the word Yovel in this verse refers to a ram, as the Rav explains. Rabbi Yossi argues that since even a ram's horn, which is known to be ideal for the mitzvah, as the Gemara on page 16a in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, it is referred to as a keren. We see that being called a keren is not a disqualification. Therefore, although the horn of a cow is called a keren, it can still be used for the mitzvah. The first Tana would reject this proof by arguing that a ram's horn is valid even though it is called a keren, because the Torah also calls it a shofar. Bimshoch hayovel hem hayalu bar v'yikol shofar. Upon an extended blast of the ram's horn, they may ascend the mountain, and it was the sound of the shofar. In Sefer Shemot, chapter 19, pasuk 13 and pasuk 19, anything that is called a shofar is valid, even if it has other names as well. A cow's horn, however, is called only a keren, therefore it cannot be used for the mitzvah. And the Rav does tell us, V'alacha kechachamim, the halacha follows the opinion of the sages. That is the end of Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Gimel continues. The Mishnah identifies the ideal shofar to be used on Rosh Hashanah. In contrast to the previous Mishnah, which discussed which horns can be used, this Mishnah states which horn is ideal. Shofar shel Rosh Hashanah shel Yael Pashut. The shofar of Rosh Hashanah should be the horn of a wild goat, which is straight. Now the Tana does not specifically require the horn of a wild goat. Rather, his point is that the horn should be straight and not curved. He mentions the wild goat only as an example of an animal whose horns are straight. This is how the Ramban explains the Mishnah. Now, since the shofar is blown during prayer, a straight shofar is preferred because it symbolizes the straight and pure thoughts a person should have when he prays. The halakha does not follow this Tana. We use a curved shofar to represent the submission and humility that are required for prayer. This is discussed in the laws of Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, chapter 586, halakha 1. Now, when the shofar was blown in the temple on Rosh Hashanah, the following laws applied. Upiv mitzupeh zahav, its mouth, the mouthpiece of the shofar blown in the temple, should be plated with gold. The gold plate was placed a bit below the shofar's mouthpiece and not directly on it, for if the actual mouthpiece would be covered in gold, the blowing would be performed on the gold and not on the shofar itself. This Rashi explains it on page 27a, Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Ushtei chatzotzrot min hatzadin, and it should have two trumpets at its sides, meaning the person blowing the shofar stands between two people blowing trumpets. Now the practice of blowing trumpets together with the shofar is derived by the Gemara, page 27a, from a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 98, pasuk 6, with trumpets and shofar sound, call out before the king, Hashem. Shofar marich v'chatzotzot mikatzerot. They start blowing the shofar and trumpets at the same time, but the shofar blast is long and the trumpet blasts are short, so the shofar is heard by itself after the trumpet blasts have ended. Shemitzvat ayom b'shofar, because the main mitzvah of the day is to blow the shofar. This is also the reason that the person blowing the shofar stood in the center, which is the position of honor. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.